Of all the things Linux did for me, it was entertainment that I rediscovered the most. And today we want to talk about embracing local media to rediscover entertainment through Linux. Thanks for checking out this Switched to Linux video. And today we do want to talk a little bit about media entertainment, because for all of the discussion about get on the streaming services and things like that, what we're seeing is people pushing back against that and a restoration of going back to buying physical media again. Actually, I swing by the same used DVD store every time I go back up to Erie, and I asked the guys there last time I was there, I said, do you see more people buying DVDs than you have in the past? And he said, yes. Because people are getting frustrated that they have Netflix and then Netflix goes ahead and does away with the content. It shifts over to some other service, and they're like, I gotta go buy that one over there just to watch the favorite show. Now, granted, some people don't like to watch the same shows over and over, and some people do. There really are two distinct ways that people consume media entertainment. I am of the category, I find TV shows I'm familiar with, and I watch the same shows over and over. That's my personal preference, and then I'll slowly feed a few more in there, and a lot of times I do that because I watch movies and things when I work, and if I'm watching something that's brand new, well, it distracts me away from the work, and I want to stay on top of it. But what we want to talk about here is the genesis of falling back in love with media entertainment through my switch to Linux. So if you've not already subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and do that if you are inclined and you want videos motivating you or teaching you about some principles of Linux, or in this case, going into some of the background philosophy about how to use Linux and what implications that might have. And so we're going to have a look at first my story of media organization and where I got into this. And then we're going to have a look at the streaming revolution, and then taking a little bit more control, and then talking about the methods that we can use to make sure that we are always able to enjoy the content that we have and like to watch. Even if, hey, maybe you like watching new things, that's okay as well. What I'm doing right now is a little experiment. I was watching the same movies over and over and over, so now I'm not allowed to watch any movies that I've seen in the last few years. And I'm letting my media player tell me which movies I have not seen in a while, because it's causing me to go back and watch things I almost forgot about, you know. It's kind of a neat little experiment. But let's go ahead and dive in with my early story of media organization, because this really goes back to looking at the good old days right when MP3s were starting to move on. In fact, I was that geek in the dorm room that had a laptop and a zip disk. And the zip drives, right? And the zip drives could fit 100 megabytes. And man, if you cut the quality of the CD down a little bit, you could fit like 5 or 6 CDs on a single disc. And so I didn't bring my music collection. I just brought a couple of zip disks. It was totally awesome. I very much enjoyed that. But at that time, of course, MP3s were just starting in. Now, I wasn't listening to a lot of music at that time. We're talking just after college and into grad school, but I was listening to a lot of sermons. And with music, even back then, though archaic, there were some media libraries that could automatically tag music as you were trying to download them and things like that. But there was no such thing with the sermons you're downloading. And so I would buy sermons, but to find them, I would need to organize them. So we're using ID tagging systems, which on Linux here, I use the KID3 tagging system to do. And there's other alternatives out there as well. That's just the one that I found works best for me and all of the platforms. So I figured out how to tag the CDs, and then I was using MP3 players. Now, these days, I still use MP3 players regularly. I use these clip jams. And I like these because they are cheap, they're small, and they do take an external SD card, and they do have a few errors here and there. They're not perfect little devices, but for a cheap price tag, that's actually what I like to do. Now, as long as I have my media tagged, I can find everything on those. And that's really what I did with the sermons, as I automatically tagged everything. And then for some MP3 players, they didn't understand how to work tags at that time. And so I structured things very rigidly into folders, titles, and then tags. So if tags were available, we actually had the ability to sort by the tag on the MP3 player. And if it wasn't, the folder structure seemed to work well. So I followed this organization through grad school and into my early professional career back when I was a college professor. And right around this time is when streaming starts to take over. Now, at that time, you were buying DVDs and it had this little code redemption for like your digital copy. And these were a number of different services. Off the top of my head, I had one a second ago. I forget what these services were called, but there were a couple of different companies, and you would go to that website, you'd enter your email address and enter the code. And then I had the physical CD, but then I could also watch that movie from an iPad, which was an interesting little thing, although it was still fairly niche because there really wasn't a lot of good cellular connections. Even Wi-Fi was slow at that point in time. Our standards were not nearly what they are now, but you could still legitimately watch movies that you had bought on the go. So if you had a tablet or an iPad, which was a fairly new thing back then, I was doing this on an iPad 2, and you were on vacation, you didn't have to bring all your movies, you just had to bring your iPad, and as long as you could find a Wi-Fi connection, you could still watch your movies. So that was kind of neat, but then this led into Netflix creating the first streaming service, and then everyone jumped onto that, and Netflix was a great deal early on because everybody's content was there because it was so new and so novel and growing so fast. But then other companies said, well, you know what? I bet that we could do something like this with our content. And so all sorts of companies started producing the same content. And what ended up happening is we had competition, and then the content started switching around year to year based on who gave the more favorable rates for licensing fees and things like this. And that is where we are right now, because we've had this major shift where nobody owns content anymore, and you didn't realize how it shifted over that era, such that we covered this article, but back in December, there was an announcement through Discovery and Sony where PlayStation had an app where you could go on, and their terminology was buy TV shows. This isn't like a subscription service where you subscribe to the service and then this content's available. You'd say, I want this show, you put down this much money, and you could go through your PlayStation app and watch the show as much as you wanted. Well, they were going to sell, and in selling, they had to drop some of those licenses, and so people were going to lose their content. Now, the backdrop of this is that after a lot of people like myself and Louis Rossman and several other people called this out, they pulled back from that. Now, you're still going to lose your content. If you still apply to that, you are still going to lose your content. You're just not going to lose it yet. So you have plans. And there are possible ways using things like OBS, the software I'm using to record this video right now. I have a video about how you can convert your old VHS tapes into digital files. You could do the same thing with that content. Okay, just saying. You paid for it. And that is a good possible option. So, of course, this did cause a little bit of discussion about, do you actually own anything or not? And in many instances, it would appear, yeah, not really. But then what happened is this article came out last week, which was an excellent article that I thought was worth looking at. Now, this applies over in Australia, and this is yet another, like this Sony and Discovery situation, yet another instance where a company changes hands, and in changing hands, a lot of content people bought were missing now from their libraries. So this person says, my whole library was wiped out, what it means to own movies and TVs in the age of streaming services. Now, I'm going to say, and why I fell back in love with media entertainment is because this doesn't have to be the choice. So I'm going to talk about the solutions I have to this at the end of this video. But as a brief summary, she is using this company, and the company is Telstra. TV box office customers announced it would shut down the service in June, and then they are migrating to another service called Fetch. Now, the way that the Telstra was working did not work the same way that Fetch did, and so what happened is this particular person paid over the course of several years $2,500 in specific purchases. And now they said you would have to pay $200 for a specialty box for Fletch to migrate not all of those movies, but just some of what she had purchased would be migrated over. And so still some information is going to be lost, but she says years and years of purchasing movies and my whole library is wiped out. What a crappy thing to do, she posted. Now, after the backlash, of course, Telstra contacted her and gave her a free fetch box. So she says that's a reasonable resolution. So the content migrates over. But again, that says some of the content did not migrate over. They don't have license for everything. And so content this person legitimately bought, she no longer has access to. And so this is happening all over the place. Of course, there was this one, there was the Discovery one, and then there's the things going on with, Netflix constantly shifting around their applications and Hulu and Disney and all these streaming services doing it, where people originally switched to Netflix, cutting cable because it was too fragmented, and now the entire streaming service world is so fragmented. Now, while these services and these streaming services were budding, I was learning a lot about Linux. And what I ended up doing is I switched over to Linux. And then what this did primarily is it gave me a boost in confidence to run servers and to learn and experiment with things, because really my computer skills had stagnated. I was a web developer with a reasonable amount of clients, and I'm happy on my Windows architecture and all this kind of stuff. And then I see that what's going on with Windows 10. I'm like, I have nothing to do with that. So I switched to Linux. But then switching to Linux isn't just turning your computer system over to Linux. You start playing with like Raspberry Pis and other computers, and you dig out that old computer that stopped working for a while, and you're seeing what you can do with that. And you might be playing around with smartphones, where now I'm running Graphene OS instead of, spyware plus Apple or Google's. So with this, it gave me the confidence to run servers, and then I had the software available to me to digitalize content. Now, to be fair, some of this software is certainly available on Windows and Mac as well, but I didn't know they existed until I switch over to Linux, and I'm seeing a lot of the software available inside of Linux distribution going, wow, what is that software? And so this is where I mentioned earlier, you have some old VHS tapes laying around, or some just old family movies. There's a company that many people talk about that's sponsoring them called Legacy Box. Obviously, I'm not sponsoring, they're not sponsoring anything here, but I've heard about Legacy Box, where you can take your old home movies and your old photographs, you can put them all in a box and send them out, and they send you back a digitalized copy of all of your stuff. Well, guess what? You can do all that kind of stuff yourself. In fact, I was actually with a client the other day, and he's an old farmer and doesn't have a computer at this point in time, barely knows how to work a phone, and so he's giving me some photos off his phone. He's like, man, there's a photo over here, and I like to have this photo. Can we take a picture of this photograph? Well, I happen to go out and I grab my little Epson scanner here. This is the Workforce ES50, and I just sat there at his desk with my laptop, and I scanned a bunch of photos into our system so we can put those on his website now as well. Well, you can buy that little device pretty cheap. You can scan your own family photos. You can convert your home movies into digital files, and you can do all that stuff yourself. Now, it may take you a lot of time, so Legacy Box might be a good service for you to use. Again, they're not a sponsor of mine. It's just one that I've seen a lot on some channels that it's certainly compelling enough if that's you. But I have a video about how you can take your old VHS tapes, which could be movies, and you can convert them. Of course, there's also software that can do movies and Blu-rays as well. But in the United States, this raises a couple of small questions. A question of legality. Now, in general, United States completely agrees format shifting is totally legal. This is why if I have a CD, I can plop that in, I can rip the disc, and for my own personal use, I can have the MP3s and play them in my car or on my ClipJam MP3 player or whatever other device I happen to have. But the question with DVDs is they are encrypted, and there's a portion of the DMCA which suggests you can't break encryption. And these laws have never been unified. We need to write our legislators and unify these laws, especially since these streaming services are taking control. Because I don't know, in a full matter of the law, is it legal to format shift your DVDs or not? It's a period of total question, because the law says as long as I own a copy of that disc, I can format shift it. But another law says, well, there's encryption on that disc, so you may not be able to. And we don't know which law takes overall precedence, because that whole DMCA is not about format shifting for your own private use. It's about format shifting for the purpose of piracy and things like that, which I completely stand against. I am not a fan of piracy. I know Louis Rossman, for example, talks a lot about that. We can agree to disagree on that. I think he makes a lot of very valid points, but I personally would prefer not to do that if there is a way to pay for the content. And so while watching DVDs and VHS has been completely inconvenient years past, and it caused me to not watch a lot of movies, the format shifting capabilities on Linux, utilizing my own servers, have enabled me and empowered me to do such things. And so because of that, I have rediscovered the media entertainment. And for the first time in a long time, I'm now actually buying more content from studios and whoever else, so the actors are getting paid, and the studios are getting paid, and the companies are getting paid, and all this because I'm buying physical media again, because I take the physical media, I discard the outer packages, I keep the disc, and I format shift it. So that is what we can do. Now, when we talk about doing format shifting, of course, we want to look at what you do with these videos. Of course, here is the video we talked about, converting your VHS tapes over. This is done in Ubuntu Mate. You can do this with anything that runs OBS, which is pretty much any Linux distribution. But now let's talk about two separate ways you have in enjoying your content. Now, my personal preference is this one here. This is utilizing a Raspberry Pi, and utilizing a Raspberry Pi, you can create a local network server. Now, there's a variety of different options. I personally use Open Media Vault because it's Debian based. And when it comes down to server management, I prefer Debian when when it is an option, because I'm very, very familiar with Debian ins and outs, everything, how it works. It's long-term, it's stable, it works. So this is looking at Open Media Vault 5. We should probably update this video, as I think 6 is out. Actually, I think 7 is even in beta. So maybe we'll update this video soon. But for now, looking at Open Media Vault, you can build this out on a Raspberry Pi and build a local NAS, which not only can be a media server for you to enjoy your content on all of the devices inside of your house and your local network, but you also have the capability of doing file sharing and even backups for phones and other things on that device as well. So definitely have a look at this video here on creating a local NAS. Way better to do something like this than to use one of the Western Digital or the Synology NASs that you see out, because every time we turn on the news, we're seeing that those are breached. Western Digital NASs are still in the wild, completely vulnerable, and they're saying, yeah, we're not supporting those things anymore. So even though the hardware still works, you just got to take it out and throw it away because it's not secure to run on a network. Well, with this guy here, you just push the updates because it's always updated. It's always updated, always works. So that is a local option. Now, there is an option to use Jellyfin, and I have not only a full comprehensive guide on installing Jellyfin, we also have a tutorial on the website on Jellyfin as well. And so you can go ahead and have a look at the website to do this. Jellyfin allows you to also consume your media when you're not on your local network. Now, you can run it on a local network, but on a local network, I still prefer the Open Media Vault and then utilizing something like Kodi to manage the files on the back end, which you can also do with VLC and things like that, using the Open LAN system, or there's just a variety of different ways. In fact, several different video players. Just here's an ISFOSS article, just a number of different media players. Now, some of these can connect to network sources. Some of these cannot. I know that VLC can connect to your network resources, so you can play things directly over the network. Otherwise, you could pull down local files, or you do something like Kodi that allows you to manage it. And Jellyfin, though, the advantage of this is you can play it on your server through a web browser. So that is certainly an option, and there are a lot of apps for Jellyfin as well. Now, this also carries with it the benefit that since it's internet-based, particularly for those that like listening to music or whatever else, or maybe you're commuting a lot on trains, you can throw your things up on a Jellyfin server, and you could watch movies or listen to music through your own server on your device instead of relying on the big tech companies. So Jellyfin certainly is an option there as well. And so those are my two ways. Again, I generally prefer the Open Media Vault method. A lot of my reason is that extra security, that I know that nobody's going to bust into my local home server and grab those. Well, unless they're committing robbery, in which case it's covered under a different set of laws. But I can't be found, quote unquote, distributing stuff if it's not on an internet connected device. That's why I prefer that. It completely keeps me clear, and there's no question that I am simply doing format shifting and not distribution, which distribution is really what your problem is. So with all of this, having the easy access now of movies on the local server and being able to watch them on any device connected on my network, this allowed me, once again, to enjoy media entertainment. So once again, we talk about boosting the economy. There was a long period of time I didn't buy movies at all because it was just too inconvenient to watch movies. Switching to Linux made it very simple for me to do that. And now, for the first time in a while since I switched to Linux, I'm actually putting out money to purchase movies. I'm not interested in streaming at all. I stand against streaming because nobody owns anything. You're just handing money out. If money's tight this month, I don't want to be like, oh, money's tight. I can either afford Netflix or food. And, okay, let's cancel Netflix and eat. And now I'm bored all night. Well, you're not going to take the movies I already have. If budget's low, I don't buy any more movies this month. I still have the hundreds I still have. Way better. And then I can watch these on anything. I own the movies. No backdoor deal is going to remove my access for my movies and the music that I have access to. I'm not going to turn it on one day. He's going, I really got to watch V for Vendetta again. It's gone off my streaming service. Nope, I have it. It's in my collection. Nobody's taken that away from some backdoor deal. So in short, Linux caused me to fall in love with entertainment once again. The movie studios received some money from me once again for the first time. Of course, I don't usually buy the new stuff they're doing, but hey, those old movies are still a lot I want to buy. I have a comprehensive list of movies I always add to it, and then anytime I need to add a few more bucks to an Amazon order for free shipping, I throw a movie on there. I might find them in thrift stores. I might shop the local economy with the used store market. So things like that. Now, that is my overall general take. If you have not already subscribed to the channel and you like this type of content, please go ahead and do that. Leave us a comment down below. Hit that like button. And again, I do prefer that local network. So go ahead and watch this Open Media Vault video done on a Raspberry Pi. Of course, you can do it on a basic computer as well. I just do it from the Pi because it's much lower power and it is a much cheaper system. And my Pis, I mean, you can do these on, I think, as low as a Pi 3 at this point in time. So it's not going to cost you more than $100-$150 because I use and prefer an external hard drive to manage the data on these drives. So have a look at that Open Media Vault video at the end. And with that, I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.